Day 1. Excited to see what changes all the new cards from Eldritch Moon can do to help the Delirium deck. How quickly can we get Delirium? Is Grim Flare worth the hype? Can't wait to find out if this deck is legit good or not. Day 2. Already having to make some alterations to the green-black Delirium deck. Some things not working as well as I had hoped, but I remain optimistic that I can carry on this mission, despite occasionally feeling a bit odd. Day 3. Major cuts today, because this is just not working. Autumnal Gloom is bad. Vessel of Nascency is bad. Grapple with the Past is bad. And if this keeps up, I'm going to have to send the whole deck packing on a fat macaroni train to Chattanooga. Wait, what? Day 11-7. The strain of solving this deck, paired with Pokemon Go and wall-to-wall coverage of political conventions, is becoming a physical threat, like a dreadful and unidentified growth or a madman lurking in the corner. Is this an aggro deck, a mid-range deck, a control deck? What's happening to my country? And what of porcupine babies? Do they hurt the mama porcupine when they come out? So many questions plagued my mind. Ooh, and Eevee. Day Pineapple. I fear I have reached an impasse. Trading turn 2 or 3 in order to guarantee Delirium means that they effectively get an extra turn to advance their board presence, and it's not entirely reliable, but it will be when I get the numbers right. The right numbers are out there, and I know it. 12 creatures, 16, 4 artifacts, none, 4 enchantments, or 6, 5 instants, 4 sorceries, how many planeswalkers? Beginning to consider adding some cards with tribal. The fools will never know. Also, considering adding Voyaging Satyr and Grizzly Salvage for the same reason. Also, feeling scared that I may be running out of nostalgic t-shirts. Stardate 1313. I'm feeling much better today. I had a legitimate breakthrough while deep in thought about moral objectivism vis-a-vis Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, when I realized it doesn't have to care about Delirium. I cut all of the gimmicky jank, and now we've got a green-black mid-range deck that just happens to get Delirium and take advantage of it. And it's maybe the best deck I've made all season. I think I may have come dangerously close to losing myself, but now I think maybe everything is going to be okay. My God.
I'm a madman. I'm a lunatic.
What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from SBMTG on the YouTube.com. Down there, we like magic and stuff. We like building decks. And today, we've got one for you. You may have heard, it's Green-Black Delirium. I've been working on this deck for what feels like a really long time. Not only was I a huge fan of Delirium, even when Shadows was out and we didn't have all the pieces for it, it was just a fun deck with a bunch of cool commons and uncommons and stuff, the occasional rare. But now that Eldritch Moon is out, we got a lot of really actually powerful pieces for the deck. So, with all these new cool pieces, how does the construction of the deck change? Turns out, drastically. Well, like I said in the intro, it's basically a Delirium deck that doesn't rely on Delirium in order to win. It's a green-black mid-range deck that plays 11 different Delirium pieces, along with some of the best removal in the format, and a bunch of really cool planeswalkers, too. So we've got a lot of powerful creatures, too, that can go in the deck. Just a lot of good options available to green-black now, and some of them happen to have Delirium, so let's try and do that. 19 creatures in our Delirium deck, which sounds like an awful lot, but like I said, this is like a mid-range deck, or even some would call it an aggro deck, that wants to win the game first and foremost. You prioritize winning the game, man. We've got a good creature suite that can help us do that, and we also can play a bunch of other cards that help us get Delirium. Even some of our creatures help us get Delirium. So, playing a bunch of creatures is not actually that much of a problem. I'll start with 3 copies of Gnarlwood Dryad here, a card that I honestly wasn't sure would make the final cut when I did the first draft. But, as it turns out, a 1-mana Death Toucher actually isn't too bad in this format, especially one that can attack profitably a little bit later on in the game. It's actually a decent threat a little later. That said, I'm not really convinced that we need 4 whole copies of this thing, but it has warranted its 3-up spot. It will often trade with creatures higher up on the curve than it. You know, it puts a creature in the yard for Delirium pretty easily. That's actually kind of a thing. And worth noting that we're playing a couple different things with Death Touch in the deck, and that's really good in a format full of Dromoka's commands. Like, 2 of the best decks in the format play 4 of Dromoka's command. On to the 2 drops, and here's 4 copies of a creature that I think is honestly like the key card in the deck that we want to build around. There's 4 copies of Grim Flare, which is very polarizing. Some people hate the card, some people think, you know, it's amazing. Some people want it to be real, but they're not sure, and then they're just out and out haters. But I was pretty encouraged to see that Todd Stevens came in 20th place at the Star City Open in Columbus with a very similar list to this. I've been building this list for a couple of weeks now, at least 2 or 2.5 weeks, something like that. And I was just very encouraged again and happy to see that he had come to very similar conclusions on this deck that I had, and he had some good success with it on the day. And he had said that Grim Flayer was the best card in the deck, and honestly, it's kind of hard to argue with him. Most of the deck is built to complement this card, honestly. It pairs very well with Liliana and all of the little spot removal that we're playing. You know, we're playing things like Deadweight, Grasp of Darkness. I've got one copy of Ultimate Price in the deck. And they really help to clear a path in the early game for your Grim Flayer so you can get through some of that combat damage. Because honestly, hitting even once with this guy feels extremely powerful and can set you up to like literally win the game. Like setting up your next 3 draws is great, or just go ahead and giving yourself Delirium, that's great. Like a lot of stuff this guy can do for you, and he gets big. So Grim Flayer is just, I think he lives up to the hype, but just in this one deck. But in this one deck, I think he may be, along with Todd Stevens, I think he may be the best card. I'm playing 3 copies of Sylvan Advocate in the deck. This is one of those things that makes it just a, you know, green mid-range deck. But Sylvan Advocate does so much in this format right now, whether it's being aggressive and attacking in, getting big a little bit later, or it's just holding down the fort in the early game for you, because there's not really much early that can attack through a Sylvan Advocate, you know? So something that has that much relevance in all points of the game is just amazing if we're playing green. And it could be argued that, like, this is, I don't even think that's arguable. This is like top 3 cards in the format right now. It's in just about every list, and it's in every list that plays green, which is most lists. So you gotta play Sylvan Advocate if we're playing green, and I'd like to slip a 4th copy in there. I don't know what to take out, and honestly, I'd much rather have Flayer on turn 2, at least in this is the only deck in the format I'll say that about, Flayer over Sylvan Advocate. But Sylvan Advocate is still just very, very important creature in the format right now that I wouldn't be caught dead not playing. 3 copies of Den Protector in the deck, which turned out to be a key card. This started off as just a one of. I was like, oh, we'll probably want to get some stuff back from our graveyard. We're doing Delirium. But it turned out that it was such a key card that it became the 3 of that you see here today. But a lot of good interactions, and obviously the basic stuff exists. You know, early game, they kill your Grim Flayer, you can get it back. Oh my god, you can get removal spells back. Like, all that holds true. We're playing a couple of copies of Hangerback Walker in the deck, and that, you know, always good with Den Protector. You know, you just basically, you know, chump block with your Hangerback Walker early game, get a couple of flyers. Later game, get back your Hangerback Walker when you flip up your Den Protector and play a big old Walker that they don't really want to kill, but they kind of have to. So, you know, all of that still holds true, but Den Protector has an especially good interaction with Liliana in this deck. Just another good card with Liliana, because, you know, you get a Liliana out, and she can bring any Den Protectors that have died back to your hand. Then, if they kill your Liliana later on in the game, you can play your Den Protector and get your Liliana back. So these 2 cards form a loop that's actually really powerful and ensures that you always have removal or a way to recurse creatures. So just amazing. I already mentioned this, but I'll formally tell you, we're playing 2 copies of Hangerback Walker, which started off as 4 copies, but this is one of those cards that sort of felt gimmicky. It's one of those things that just makes sure that we can activate Delirium as early in the game as we possibly can, you know? Because it's an artifact and a creature, so it counts as 2 things in the graveyard for Delirium. And you can just play it for 0 on turn 1 if you want to, and automatically have half of Delirium for 0 mana. So that is always a very powerful interaction, and it's good with Den Protector. You know, we can get it back later on in the game. We can get it back with Liliana too, by the way, later on in the game, and then play a huge one. So Hangerback Walker, pretty good, very, very annoying, and great for grinding out games as well. But honestly, I don't want a ton of copies of the card in the deck. It's just not vital as compared to a lot of the other things we're running. Just 1 copy of Death Mist Raptor in the deck. You know, I figured we're playing 3 Den Protectors. Let's slip a Death Mist in. It's just another resilient, recursive piece that we can get back. Later on in the game, when we get back our Den Protectors with Liliana and then flip them up, we'll be guaranteed a free Death Mist Raptor, you know? But I don't want to go overboard or anything. I just think it's a solid creature against some decks, and does make us a little bit more grindy. We have plenty of those pieces. That's always good. Just 2 copies of Mind Rack Demon in the deck. This is another thing that I wanted to play 4 copies of. Notice that all of the even traditionally strong Delirium pieces are getting slightly cut in this deck. But Mind Rack Demon, that said, is still pretty good in the format. He survives some of the popular removal that we're playing, Grasp and Languish, and he's good against both Avacyn and Gisela in the air, so I think that's not bad. He blocks and kills spirits all day. That's also a thing that we need to consider. So card isn't bad, and it leads us into situations where we like turn 2 Grim Flayer, turn 3 Liliana, and almost guarantee Delirium with a turn 4 Mind Rack Demon. So card isn't terrible at all. I just didn't feel, again, like we needed like 3 or 4 copies of it. It's good when we get it, but later on in the game, we'll grind the game out with different stuff than this. This just almost never wins me the game. And we'll finish off the creatures, which I know is going to make some people sad because we're not playing a big old frog, but we are playing 1 copy of Ishkana. I'd rather play the spider than the frog, to be honest. Especially in this deck. This is probably the best card in the format when you have Delirium, honestly. And we saw a bunch of different decks play it over the weekend at Columbus, and I think it's probably going to be, at least it's going to try to be, an important card in the format. I really like Ishkana in this deck an awful lot, especially when we do have Delirium. And again, with Den Protector and Liliana, you can ensure that if they do manage to kill this thing, that is another piece, by the way, that's resilient to a lot of removal in the format. If they do manage to kill it, you've got multiple ways of getting her back and getting a bunch of spiders. And the more times you play her, the more spiders you're going to have and the more damage that ability will do. So really, Ishkana has been fantastic. And again, never quite a game ender, but just one of those incredibly grindy cards that is good when you're extending the game. Let's move on to the Planeswalkers in the deck, which we're playing 5 of. And we'll go ahead and tell you that we're playing 4 whole copies of Liliana the Last Hope. Well, it's been more or less universally decided after just 1 weekend, but a lot of testing by pro players that this card is in fact the real deal. It showed up in 3 different decks of the first top 8 of Eldritch Standard. You know, 3 out of 5 or 3 out of 8 is absolutely amazing. So I think the card is probably real. It's very good too against spirits. It's good against white aggro decks, and it's also good against some of the Bant Company decks, even if you're not killing their creatures outright. That +1 ability is just a scourge right now and was a huge part of this tournament over the past weekend. And I think that +1 will be one of the better parts of the card going forward. But in this deck, her neg 2 is also very good. And her neg 2, by the way, was lauded by a few different players over the last weekend. A lot of people love her second ability. And this deck really likes it. There's going to be times where we're putting stuff in the graveyard that we either don't want there or that we really want to get back later. Say that we lose a Grimflayer in combat. Later on, when we hit Delirium, we can get it back with her neg 2, play it, and suddenly we got a 4/4 that can threaten to do like Sensei's Divining top stuff whenever it hits. Like it's absolutely crazy. We can get back Sylvan Advocates with her a little bit later, Mind Rack Demons and stuff like that. Just like, card is very real. And if you do happen to get her ultimate off, by the way, you kind of win the game as long as you can extend it for just a couple of turns. We're also going to throw 1 Ob Nixilis on the pile. I love the fact that it's unconditional removal on that second ability. That's great. And it's card draw, which the deck could really use at least a little bit of. You know, we've got card advantage in the form of a few different things, namely Liliana is technical card advantage, but we don't just have much that just like draw cards. You know, like Den Protector, he's also virtual card advantage, but we're not really drawing cards. So Ob Nixilis is at least a way to do that, but I don't want to go overboard and play a bunch of copies of him. He's mostly just so we have a 5th Planeswalker to put in the graveyard, but pretty good guy if you're going to play another Planeswalker. We're playing 12 total other spells in the deck, 4 of which are enchantments, and they're all 4 copies of Dead Weight. The card is very good in this format right now, even if it doesn't outright kill creatures. Sometimes early on you'll play a Dead Weight on a guy, and then Liliana will finish him off a little bit later. And you didn't actually lose anything, because you played the Liliana and you +1'd her. You didn't lose any loyalty counters or anything. So really good in conjunction with Liliana is Dead Weight. And then, by the way, you'll put an enchantment in the graveyard. Not bad at all. And it's really good alongside Grimflayer. That's awesome too, you know. Grimflayer on turn 2. This on turn 3 alongside maybe, say, another removal spell or maybe a Sylvan Advocate or something. But especially on turn 3 alongside another removal spell, you'll almost guarantee that you get through with a Grimflayer. And like I said, if you get through with a Grimflayer, like, you are golden, pony boy. Like, you're doing really well if you just hit with him once, especially that early. Just Dead Weight is very good against not only spirits, a lot of things in Bant Company, white aggro variants and stuff like that. There's a lot of decks that play like 27 to 30 creatures in the format right now. There's green-black aristocrats and stuff. Just very effective card against a lot of things. We're going to play 4 Grasp of Darkness and 1 Ultimate Price in the deck. 4 Grasp of Darkness, I feel like it's just, Grasp is one of the best removal spells in the format. I mean, it takes out almost anything they could ever play in the very early game in this format, and even most of the stuff that they'll play in the later game, you know. Creatures are in some ways judged on whether or not they can survive a Grasp, but honestly, not that many creatures people are playing can. Like, this hits 90-some-odd% of creatures in the format at instant speed, and that's incredibly powerful. Same thing with Ultimate Price. I just do that so we can kind of play a 5th copy of Grasp, sort of. It's a different card, obviously, but it's just another 2 mana instant speed removal spell, and it hits a surprising amount of very, very important creatures. That's all 5 instants. Let me hit you with the 3 sorceries. We're playing just 1 copy of Traverse the Ulvenwald in the deck, and Traverse the Ulvenwald I feel like is maybe one of the weaker cards in the deck, but it can go search up any land that we need if we need lands, but mostly we're looking for post-Delirium creatures on this one. So we can go get our Ishkana or something like that. Post board, we can go get a Kalitas. That's also good. So Traverse the Evenwald is just a way of playing a more sort of toolboxy kind of strategy and getting away with it. And I just want to at least play the 1 copy. I mean, early game that can smooth out our mana, that's good. Can fix our mana if we needed to. Later on in the game, it can go get whatever creature benefits us most. So I feel like, especially for just the 1 mana, it's worth sandwiching in a copy. And to finish off the sorceries, 2 copies of Ruinous Path in the deck. Just a premium removal spell in the format. We need ways of taking out planeswalkers, which there are a fair amount of right now. And this is a good one. Some of these Delirium decks will play like 4 Ruinous Path though, and I'm not exactly sure that that's the way to go. I mean, especially moving forward in the format. It looks like Bant Spirits or Bant Coco is going to be a very important deck for the next couple of months while this format holds. And with that in mind, that deck doesn't really play any planeswalkers. So I don't know that Ruinous Path will be as important as it was when, Green-White Tokens was the dominant deck in the format. But I think that Green-White Tokens will take a hit and be replaced by Company for the last couple of months here. So with that in mind, I just don't think it's as important to kill planeswalkers, but this will always be, while it's in the format, an important removal spell. 24 lands in the deck, and it's fairly cut and dry, to be honest with you. We're obviously going to play Hissing Quagmire, and we need to play Evolving Wilds, so that we have a number of lands that are very easy to get into the graveyard. And, other things can put lands in the graveyard, Grimflayer, Liliana, all that, whatever. But these are cards that we can very easily put there when we need them there, especially Evolving Wilds. So, not a very, hard mana base to build or anything. I just wanted you to have time, while I was babbling, to absorb it. Here's our super important sideboard, and there's a few things I want to touch on here, especially Aerial Volley here first. In a format full of spirits and a format that likes Hangerback Walker, Aerial Volley can be really, really important. And note that you can either kill 2 or 3 smaller guys, or you can kill 1 Spell Queller for just 1 mana, which is very, very important to note. We're also playing Duress and Transgress the Mind, both of which I think are very good in this format, and either of which could maybe go in the main deck. I like the idea of Duress, or even Transgress, because Transgress, this is important, can hit Spell Queller, which is maybe one of the better creatures in the format already. It's just played in so many different decks over this last weekend, and we'll continue to see play as long as Collected Company is a card, at least. So, not only will Transgress get the Spell Queller out of their hand, it'll also get the Collected Company and a bunch of other stuff in that deck, Thalia included, lots of stuff. So, just Transgress has been a great card, and Duress is a no slouch either. Either one of these could be in the main deck. I'm just not really sure what to take out. And here are your power rankings, a final score of 69, which is a very, very competitive score for a deck that's not actually going to cost you that much and has a fair amount of good numbers. You notice all the 7s, a few 8s there, although we do a couple of things just sort of average, But we don't do anything super poorly. We've got good defense because of all the removal we're playing. We've got pretty decent offense because of all the creatures we're playing. So we've got some good stats, we're fairly consistent. We do good both game 1 and game 2 because our board is very important. So a lot of good stuff going for this deck, and the main deck with the lands included is only going to cost you about $200. Sounds like a lot, I know, but remember last standard when we had fetch lands and Jaces were like $100 a pop and decks were like $1,000 on the high end, so $200, not bad at all. And if you want to purchase this entire sideboard, mostly because of Kalitas being in there, the sideboard is about $75, $80, so you're looking at low prices, mid prices really, about $275 getting out the door on this one, and that is really not that bad for a very competitive, and I really think this is very competitive, standard deck. But that is all I've got for now. What's next though? Always an important question. Next I'm going to do a mono deck. I'm not really sure, but a monocolored deck is coming. Is it going to be mono white mid-range, or is it going to be red deck wins, aka big red, aka mono red mid-range? I'm not really sure. I've got both sort of drafted up right now, but there's still some evolution for them to go through, some sort of testing. So let me know what you want to see. Mono white mid-range, which is going to have like angels and Thalia and removal and stuff, or Big Red, which is basically, same thing, big creatures and removal, just a different color. So let me know which one you're more excited about and you want to see, because I think they're both kind of competitive decks. And I will see you next time. I'm Devin from SBMTG. Thanks for watching, my wizards.